Alright, you sign of the cross-exploiting bastards. Here is an OP dual sword build. Before we start, I first need to thank a subscriber called Amethyst Amnesty because this is part his build. He put me on the right way how to think to create a very powerful build with dual swords for Way of the Wise as well. So thank you, mate. I did change a couple of things and implemented some more things so that it's slightly more flexible than usual. All of the footage is from Way of the Wise, as it should be. I'm going to give you two ways to build this. One will be extremely low risk but lower damage, and the other one will be higher risk but higher damage. You can choose whatever you want. So let's get started. Let's cover core stats first. Try to get change to attack body on your Master Swordsman dual swords, that way you can put points into body which will increase your HP, which will increase your survivability on Way of the Wise. Put some points into heart to have enough ki to do the attacks, some points into stamina and strength so that you can wear Sign of Virtue set, the rest of it put into skill to increase damage from dual swords, put some small points into dexterity, and the rest in magic. As for the spirit, you can choose if you want all the available special effects from Enku Guardian Spirit, but you don't need to have it at 33, you can have it at 20 and something just to unlock that nullify damage special effect from Enku. It's up to you. And now for the equipment. Let's cover first the riskier version. You're going to need Master Swordsman set and the weapon from that set. The bonus that is most significant here is Sign of the Cross plus 30% more damage. Good thing is also increased attack and defense for dual swords plus 52 in this current setup. For the special effects on the sword, you're going to have some luck forging new dual swords and to get Sign of the Cross skill damage increase. This is a must. There's no debate about this. This needs to be done. So good luck with forging. I also got a little bit more luck and received skill damage buff as well on my weapon. I have some shitty inherited one that I can't replace with anything significant, and change to attack body. Here you can choose change to attack skill if you can't get body, or you can go for something else. It's up to you. I prefer body because it gives me more survivability, as I said in stats section. For the second part, you can get Warrior of the West 4 pieces. That way you will get more close combat damage, plus 13% almost. And for the ranged weapons, go with the traditional ones. Warrior of the West bow, and if you want Ravenwing rifle for some more additional damage reduction. Now for the armor pieces. Go for the Hino Enma Kabuto that increases close combat attack versus enemy paralyzed. And for the rest of the pieces, go 3 times Master Swordsman armor and 1 Warrior of the West. If you're fighting an opponent that is completely immune to paralysis, then you can switch Hino Enma Kabuto with 1 more Master Swordsman piece, and you can also do 2 Tatenashi pieces instead of 1 Master Swordsman and Hino Enma. That way you can get equipment weight damage bonus from 2 pieces of Tatenashi set. So either go with Hino Enma Kabuto if you can paralyze an enemy, or go with Master Swordsman's headpiece, or you can go 2 Tatenashi pieces, 1 headpiece instead of Hino Enma Kabuto, and 1 Tatenashi instead of Master Swordsman. You will lose 5 pieces bonuses on Master Swordsman, so I don't really know if that is worthwhile. It's up to you really. You will increase your survivability a bit. For the accessories, goes with something that will increase close combat attack versus paralyzed enemy, and go for Yasakani's Magatama. If the enemy is immune to paralysis, you can go instead increase damage versus paralyzed enemy for something defensive, like elemental damage received is reduced. Anything, up to you. These are my shortcuts here: Slot, Weakness, Paralytic, Groundfire, Carnage, Tiger Running, Steel, Quick Change. Tiger Running is optional here, everything else is a must. Now we'll change to another set. This is far less riskier one, and you can just do whatever you want with this set. You're pretty much invulnerable all the time. This is how it looks like. Sign of Virtue, complete bonuses, because we are aiming at the last one. And our main weapon is the same dual swords from Master Swordsman. This bonus after dash attack times 2 is very useful in this setup, because we will rush in, do an attack, get that bonus and get invulnerability from Enku, and we can then pump Sign of the Cross into the enemy. Same thing goes for this setup as well. If an enemy can be paralyzed, you go for Hino and Makabuto. If enemy cannot be paralyzed, then you can switch for whatever you want. Up to you. Oh yeah, don't forget to get attack on all of the armor pieces. I didn't bother with that. Now, the one thing that you need to put in here is Hermit Talisman for this setup. It's really, really important. So switch Tiger Running Scroll with that, with Hermit Talisman. And that's it for the equipment. As I said, this version will do less damage, but is much safer, while the other version, the first one that I shown you, the Master Swordsman one, will net you higher damage, but you can die easily as well. I won't be covering skills, do the basic passives and do whatever you want from the dual swords section. Sign of the Cross is the must, obviously. If you're going for the Sign of Virtue setup, you're going to use Enku as your Guardian Spirit because of the nullify damage dash attacks. That's a must. If you're not going to use Sign of Virtue, if you want to use Master Swordsman, then you have two options. One is Karajishi because of the increased attack skill. That means when you use your skill, you will have increased attack buff that stacks with Carnage. This is one of the options. That means that your first initial attack will be, with Sign of the Cross, will be much lower, but any subsequent attack will be higher. Alternative to Karajishi is Kato, because he gives you skill damage increase directly, and with it you will have more damage from the first Sign of the Cross that you do. So these are your three options. As for the backup one, for the secondary Guardian Spirit, you can go for Ayakomori for more damage from behind, or whatever you want. It's not that relevant. And that's it for the equipment section. Now it's time for fighting. If you have any questions, please post in comments. As for the skills, I really didn't want to bother with it. Just go for usual passives that go across the board. If you don't know which ones are these, check any of my other builds where I explain in detail so that I don't repeat myself here too much. And let's go to fighting. First, let's compare two builds versus Honda Tadakatsu, a dude that cannot be paralyzed. I put Slot and Weakness on him, and this is first Master Swordsman, the riskier build, which does more damage. Also, I've used Carnage on myself and Steel to reduce the effect, the negative effect of Carnage. You can also use Protection if you want, up to you. And now it's only a matter of using Sign of the Cross, trying to get behind an enemy using Sign of the Cross. Now note that when you do Sign of the Cross attack, you can immediately keep pulse and then go into another Sign of Cross faster than usual. That means you can connect many Sign of the Crosses in a fast succession. Now for the Sign of Virtue. In this one, the only change that you need to do is use Hermit Talisman, which for some reason I forgot to use immediately. That way you will not be staggered when you're charging Sign of the Cross. This build does less damage only because it's harder to get behind an enemy in time necessary to use that ×2 buff from your set. Tactic is simple here. Rush into enemy, do running attack. When you do running attack, or dashing attack, you will receive nullified damage buff that makes you invulnerable for a couple of seconds, and also ×2 damage buff for your next attack. That's why we are running into an enemy and then using Sign of the Cross. It's simple as that. So run into an enemy, do an attack, the buff is active, use Sign of the Cross. Typical stuff needs to be done: Carnage on yourself, Hermit Talisman on yourself, Weakness on the enemy, or Sloth on the enemy as well. If you cannot paralyze, it's usually a good idea to use Sloth, like versus Honda Tadakatsu. And the last fight here that I will be showing you is against Lee Naomasa on Way of the Wise. You can see that it was really no trouble at all to deal with him. We are again using Master Swordsman version that does more damage. When you can use Paralyze Trap, there's really no need to go for Sign of Virtue, because with Paralysis it's much safer to play versus humans and yokai alike, so you don't need to use the less riskier option. But Sign of Virtue combination with Enku is better used against enemies like Saika boss, then versus that cat boss on Way of the Wise, White Tiger, yeah, that's the name, because they are really hard to deal with if they are moving constantly and you cannot use Sign of the Cross and you cannot paralyze them as well. Or it's hard to paralyze if the enemy is moving like Saika constantly. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you soon.